Good evening and welcome. Well, in its bid to promote environmental sustainability, government took a decision to promote CNG as a viable fuel alternative with subsidies and incentives. NGC CNG was incorporated in 2013 and operationalized in 2014-2015 with an aim to build a CNG industry. Well, quite recently, however, we've been hearing of reports of motorists in South Trinidad particularly expressing some level of frustration with the availability and accessibility of CNG, while UNIPET service stations had been closed for their operations, particularly complaining of low profit margins. Joining us on set tonight are President of NGC CNG, Mr. Curtis Mohammed. We also have with us the Communications Manager at NGC CNG, Mr. Roger Sant, and we have the Sales and Marketing Manager of NGC CNG, Ms. Alisa Goindoo. Good evening and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening. Good evening.
So we would like to begin our discussion by taking you back a bit to a few weeks ago where we aired a story highlighting some of the challenges faced by motorists in South at the CNG pumps. Let's take a look.
Other South taxi drivers are disillusioned with the length of time they have to wait to get CNG to fill their vehicles. More than one of them say they have to wait between 1 to 2 hours to get the essential resource. Krishna Jairam spoke with TTT.
Well, I hear about almost 40 minutes right now. Well, I was one of the personnel from last week on our first visit. Okay, and up to this point, it's even worse because what you've seen for all yourself, what's going on here with the line system, and when you go Monrepo, it's all kind of stories are here. I know people's name, but I quote in Monrepo ready, but ready for what? We're not getting no gas.
Indrani Singh Harilal reasons that if government is interested in having people switch to CNG, then waiting endless hours for the fuel is counterproductive.
When I leave Princetown and I don't get here, I have to go to like McBean or I have to go further up by Chuck E. Cheese to fill up, which is unfair to us. I mean, we spend our money to put this on our vehicle, and it's $12,000 we spent to do that. Well, then why urge people to put it into their vehicle, right? Remember, everybody making the sacrifice to change. Change is good, but why do that?
Vaughan Hood, too, expressed his frustration at the situation and is urging government to put it right.
We need a better system. We need something to be put in place. We need to be looking at this more seriously than this. If that is the way that you want to push the country to go in, we need to do something more serious. It's either we're going to do something, make a serious move behind the station being operational, fully operational, and not with this compressor that they have here, but fully operational with a pump dedicated and pumps dedicated towards doing this and making sure that at least 3 or 4 stations in the San Fernando area has that capacity.
Marie-Therese Bernard, TTT News.
So there we heard from the motorists themselves who were expressing some of the inconveniences that they have been facing at the pump. So my first question to you, Mr. Mohammed, is there a CNG shortage?
Verna, there is no CNG shortage. Actually, the month of October where this event would have occurred is our highest CNG sales on record.
What would have accounted for that?
What was unfortunate in the month of October, a few weeks ago, would have been we were operating at a particular station in San Fernando, the Monrepo station, for a little under 3 years, very reliably. We had a planned shutdown for a certain amount of days, and then we had a slightly extended shutdown for about 2 more days. Supply was put in place at another location. And unfortunately, that entire issue sort of evolved into a much larger issue that we see now today, which is the issue of really margins at certain stations. So with respect to the particular station, it is reliable. We have quite a few other stations in Trinidad and Tobago. We do admit, though, that South in general, we need to accelerate some of the stations down on that side. We will discover where in Trinidad and Tobago, people put new stations where most of the cars are. There's East-West Corridor, Central, and so on. Certainly, we are working with the UNIPETs, the NPs, to put more stations in South. There's San Fernando, there's Monrepo, there's Point Fortin. We actually already procured the equipment for Point Fortin. We are looking at a new station in South Urupuch there. Somebody's put an application in, and that's going to be a very large station. So that'll be perfect for down south, and that'll deal with comprehensively the Southern Peninsula. We've worked with NP, and we've kind of identified a few locations from Pina to other locations in San Fernando as well. So we agree.
Okay.
We need to accelerate the program in in South. We need to put something in place for the people. But there actually are quite a few other stations all over Trinidad and Tobago from central to north as well.
Okay, so what are we doing, or what is your company doing in order to meet any growing demand for CNG to ensure that this does not happen again?
All right. We really have two models we could follow. One would be where we partner with the existing stations, that's the NP network and the UNIPET network. Now, by doing that, we allow station operators to be able to transition, as they know, once prices of fuel go where it most likely would go, as deregulation might happen in the future, there would be the need for a low-price fuel as well. Now, CNG, that's our competitive advantage in Trinidad and Tobago. CNG is already there. They have the pipeline network is quite extensive. All subsidies removed from all fuels in a deregulated market. The gap between CNG and the gap between the other liquid fuel prices will get only wider. So it allows the existing station network to transition and to be able to say, well, okay, we are selling not just liquid fuels, we're also selling CNG. That's one model. The other model is, if we can't get enough locations for CNG, we may have to consider the other options. The other options might be CNG-only stations. Now, that will be something that we'll be looking at as well. It's not our first call. But if we need to, that is what we're going to do in certain strategic locations along our gas pipelines, along the rest of Trinidad and Tobago.
So we're talking about the possibility of having CNG-only stations. So then it brings into question dealers saying it's no longer profitable. How does this fit in? Because they've been complaining about the high electrical costs to run the CNG equipment.
Okay, so, but the issue that finally came to bear was the electrical cost, right? Now, we have given our inputs to the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries with respect to possible solutions and so on. So they've listened to us. The Ministry of Energy, and this would have been a statement just last week by the Minister of Energy, is also looking at it closely with the station operators, those on CNG, on the CNG operating side. And he would have indicated that within 2 or maybe 3 weeks, they will come up with some sort of a solution. So the matter is with the regulator. We know they are working with it. They have been consulting with us. And we are pretty confident that there will be a solution on that impasse.
Wonderful.
Now, what we will admit, though, we still see very strong support with all the existing CNG operators in Trinidad and Tobago, notwithstanding what you might think or hear. They have been working avidly. Indeed, during the station shortages of liquid fuel, CNG was actually running in some of those stations. That was the only fuel that was being run.
Okay.
Okay?
We'd like to talk a little bit about the phases. We understand that CNG would have been expected to take place in 2 phases. Ms. Goindoo, can you describe these phases for us?
So, just as background, the government would have mandated the NGC to form the separate company of NGC CNG to, push the thrust of CNG as the major alternate fuel in the country. So, phase 1, which is the approved phase, it's actually for a budget of $500 million to achieve targets of 22 stations and just about 17,500 vehicles.
Okay.
So to just give context of that 500 million, we have actually only spent just about $160 million to accomplish over half our targets already. For stations, we are just about 18 stations out of that 22, and we've crossed just about half our vehicle targets. So we have there about 8,000 vehicles in the market, and we continue to add in just about 250 vehicles per month on the CNG thrust.
Okay. If we were to look at, and I mentioned it a little bit, in terms of the amount of vehicles that we have currently on the road, that growing demand, do you see this way forward as being the ideal way in terms of meeting that demand?
Well, when you look at the vehicles that we have in the market, we have, and it was said by the minister, just about 1 million vehicles on the road. This is internal combustion vehicles.
Right.
CNG is the viable option for these persons, especially the long distance drivers, and for us target segments such as maxi taxis and taxi drivers, commercial fleets. to have a cost-effective fuel to get more disposable incomes on switching to CNG.
Okay. And I understand that we also have a graph where it actually shows the sales volume. So I'm hoping that we can put that graph up very soon. And we'd like to discuss some of those figures. And I also understand, as you mentioned, that October being one of the largest for you in terms of the sales. Yes. So that figure is up. Mr. Sant or whoever else would like to, discuss with us, walk us through some of those figures.
I'll take that one.
Sure.
So we see here some figures that will be just about 24 months thereabout of sales. This is very closely associated with the work we do in the market. It's also associated with the amount of vehicles that are being purchased, the new vehicles that are being purchased as well. We are achieving month-on-month between 10 to maybe 12% increase. So the average really for that period you're looking at there is actually about 11% increase of CNG per month. Now, it is aggressive. Yes, it is aggressive. That actually as well is only about 50% or so of the total capacity of the stations we have in the market. So, San Fernando aside, the majority of the stations in Trinidad and Tobago still have significant capacity for sales for CNG. Also, the stations that we have in the network already in the top, they are in the top 20 of the stations by volume of all sales, like liquid fuels, for example. And at our last estimate, we have about 100 to 120,000 or so vehicles that frequent those stations. Bear in mind, we only have about 8,000 vehicles right now. So the market potential, we have easy reach as it is right now. So some people will say, you don't have enough stations. But really and truly, almost 10% of all the cars in Trinidad and Tobago are already going to those same stations where there's CNG right next door. Okay. So we do have the capacity. The growth is the growth that you're seeing there. It is probably about 50%, as I mentioned to you guys, 50% of the station capacity as it is. So it continues to grow. Okay. Every month.
And Mr. Sant, did it come as a surprise that October the results were quite good?
Well, we have been experiencing steady growth over the last 24 months, as Mr. Mohammed said. So we were expecting growth. We did have that situation in South Trinidad where that particular station, which is a high volume station, was down for about 10 days. We did put an alternate supply in place at a nearby station, so it wasn't that persons had no supply in South, it's just that the lines were a bit longer. Was it a surprise? Not really, because as Mr. Mohammed said, we have stations across the east-west corridor from Diego Martin to Timpuna, and also 3 stations in central Trinidad. So for the customers who live and or work in North Trinidad, East Trinidad, Central Trinidad, they had an ample places to fill in October. And we're expecting another bumper month in November, and we expect it will continue to grow month on month as more and more people come on.
And actually, anyone from South Trinidad that's traversing to North, which will be quite a few people, they also had other options as well for filling. So it's not just about South Trinidad. Okay. And remember as well, CNG is actually an extra fuel that you have. So you're not without fuel. You might be without CNG for the period of that service, but you always had something to move with. Okay. Well,
on that note, we'd like to take a very short break. And when we return, we'll be talking a little bit about the benefits of actually going to CNG, something maybe you viewers at home would like to consider. So let's take a very short break. We return with much more. Good evening and welcome back. Joining us on set, as we mentioned earlier, we have Mr. Curtis Mohammed. He is the president of CNG NGC. We also have the sales and marketing manager at NGC CNG, Ms. Alisa Goindoo. And we have with us also the communications manager at CNG NGC, Mr. Roger Sant. And of course, we've been talking about some of the challenges that have been facing some of the motorists at the CNG pumps. And at this time, we'd like to talk a little bit about some of the benefits of switching to CNG. So my first question to you, Ms. Goindoo, let's say someone drives a Honda City, which we understand also comes in that CNG version, but at present they're not CNG, so they pay, let's say, perhaps $600 for the month, so $150 per week. Right. With their regular traversing, if they were to convert to CNG, what would be some of the savings to their disposable income, perhaps?
So in terms of the price of CNG, it's $1 per liter. And what you're mindful of is that liter carries you the same distance that a liter of gasoline will carry you. So when you do a conversion, let's say you are using $600 a month in liquid fuel. On CNG, that's just about $150, say $200 if you want to round it off. And then you're looking at $400, $500 a month in your pocket. So that's over $6,000. And that's for a regular short user. We have consumers who are using $1,000, $2,000 a month and telling us on their savings, they have been able to send their kids to school. We have taxi drivers, for example, and that's one of our target segments. And on CNG, they save about $2,000, $3,000 a month. So in a year, you have $24,000 to $30,000 that you would have no other access to from just disposable income, and this is from switching to CNG. So when you have $24,000 and you hear the taxi drivers saying that this is what's paying their mortgage, this is what's sending their kids to school, it really drives home that CNG is the option for these persons to save and the benefit in their household and just their standard of living. We have them working long hours, and we have testimonials from maxi taxi drivers who would tell you that they would work 7 days a week to bring in their income. And on CNG, because CNG also works on the diesel maxi taxis, we have drivers who will tell you that they no longer work 7 days. They can work a 5 or 6 day week and shorter hours for that same value income that they bring in. So the quality of life is better for them.
Would they have to make significantly increased stops at the CNG pumps?
Well, the distance in terms of driving depends on your tank filling as well. So on an average consumer, your 70-liter tank, let's say, will carry you 200, 250 kilometers. But as Mr. Mohammed would say, it's an added fuel. So you always have a secondary fuel, whether it's a diesel as well as the gasoline, depending on which conversion you have, and you go your range.
Okay. Now, Mr. Sant, what are some of the incentives that are available for those who may be desirous of switching to CNG?
Well, one of the early incentives that NGC CNG put in back in 2015 was to encourage maxi taxi owners who had old diesel-powered vehicles to switch to a CNG-powered vehicle, and they would apply to us for an incentive of either $45,000 or $75,000. $45,000 for a small maxi or $75,000 for a large maxi, a 25-seater maxi. And basically, we would scrap the old vehicle and give them that incentive which they will use towards purchasing a new CNG-powered maxi taxi. So in essence, we were taking, and this incentive is still in place, we are taking old diesel-powered vehicles off the road and replacing it with a CNG-powered vehicle. We also have incentives as of last year where we are sponsoring the cost of conversion for taxis, and also we offered, based on every time a new CNG station was opened, we offered sponsored conversions for members. Yes, for members of the public. So you had to go into that particular new CNG supply point, and it was an NLCB approved promotion where you enter and then you had a chance to win. So we have been taking care of several of the key market segments in Trinidad and Tobago. We also have, and we invited applications from fleet owners, companies who had fleets of vehicles, to apply for incentives from us via an expression of interest, and that was oversubscribed back in 2018, and now we are in the process of actually making awards towards those companies to start converting their vehicles to CNG. So we've looked at it from a holistic point of view and tried to target really the high mileage users in Trinidad and Tobago as that first option to get them to switch and to offer incentives to help them to switch to CNG. So
if we were to talk about the regular users, those who are not taxi drivers, the rate of conversion, is it encouraging? Has it been encouraging so far?
It has been. We have them coming on, as Mr. Sant would have mentioned, through the sponsored conversions at the stations, but more so we have them coming on their own accord just for that consumer benefit of the savings. So they are going to the converters and requesting conversions. They are purchasing the OEM, because it's not just the conversion market. They are looking for the OEM vehicles. So you have the sedan, and then even on the commercial side, you have the fleet, the trucks. We have OEM CNG options for commercial as well as the maxi taxi and omnibuses, school buses, and they are purchasing these for that cost saving.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Sant, you know, the environmental sustainability aspect of it, is the Trinidad and Tobago population really informed as they ought to be about the benefits of CNG?
Well, that's one of the so-called silent benefits of CNG. You don't hear a lot of people talking about it. We certainly do, in that it is the cleanest available fossil fuel that you can use as a fuel for your vehicle. So if you switch to CNG, you're instantly emitting about 30% less in terms of your carbon emissions. And people don't talk a lot about it, but there is that super benefit of less emissions. So we've used the example before of driving behind a diesel-powered bus, and you see the back of the bus might be dirty with soot and fumes, etc. You drive behind a CNG-powered vehicle, a CNG-powered bus, the equivalent, and it's clean. And that right away will give you some sort of sense of how much cleaner CNG is as a fuel. And Trinidad and Tobago has signed on to the COP21 treaty, and we've made certain declarations with respect to reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. And in the transportation sector, we have committed to reduce our emissions by 30% by the year 2030. And a lot of that is built on the CNG program, is positioned and pivoted on the CNG program in Trinidad and Tobago. And that is something that we are always mindful of as we talk about CNG, and we try to tell people about the benefits of CNG.
Mr. Mohammed, over your experience in NGC CNG, do you think it has been encouraging in terms of seeing people's reaction towards becoming more environmentally friendly?
Verna, certainly. Of course, the first reaction we get from people, and this is just people coming into the company, is they are surprised, they're shocked that they could actually get something like this and save money. Unfortunately, the Trinidad and Tobago public, it's surprising. People don't actually understand how to invest. Average people don't understand how to invest to save money. Maybe it's because things are generally low priced that they would need. But that's the first thing that hits us when they come to visit us at a company. We can't believe this. This is so simple, and it makes so much sense. You know, a taxi driver could save, technically a taxi driver will save in 4 months enough money to pay for the kit. But just getting access to that funding, the normal channels to the bank and so on, all the requirements, it becomes challenging for some of them. Strangely enough, only a few people will come to us and say, it's so nice and clean. And I'll tell you one of the groups that would be very vociferous would actually be the Maxi men. The Maxi Association would said, you know, it's amazing that this is so clean. And probably because they are on the bus route, yes, and you're back and forth on the bus route. So when you have the CNG Maxis on the bus route, when you have the PTSC buses with CNG in the bus route, they noticed it. They noticed it very, very clearly, because almost all the vehicles, they are primarily diesel. Yes. So they are the ones we get a lot of that pull from. We do have some very right-thinking persons that say, I'm going to buy a vehicle because it's cleaner. They are not in the majority, yes, but we do have some, yes.
Mr. Sant, that is your experience as well.
Yes, we experience that all the time, and as Mr. Mohammed said, I guess the environment is not the instant thing off the top of our minds as an average Trinidad and Tobago national. We're more price sensitive, but we do find maybe 2 in 10 CNG users actually looking and contemplating the environmental benefit of CNG.
All right. So if we were to look at the CNG vehicles and some of the other technologies that are available, how do these CNG vehicles measure up? And that question is open.
May I go first? All right. If I have an electric or a plug-in vehicle and I have a CNG vehicle, they're both being fueled with something. If my plug-in vehicle is only being charged with fossil fuel, around the vehicle and driving the vehicle, it seems clean, but at the end of the day, it's really a trade-off. So you may very well find that you use more hydrocarbon to charge certain vehicles. And in the Trinidad context, all of our power is natural gas. The grid is not yet efficient. It's going to take a fair amount of investment to go in that direction. So we've done the assessment, and we could tell you that, you know, it's not the same amount of gas that you would use to power a CNG vehicle and a plug-in vehicle being plugged into the grid. Now, if somebody had a plug-in vehicle and they were using solar power or wind power, some other renewable source, definitely that's fantastic. If perhaps CNG vehicle being run on biomethane, for example, if Swimcall re-engineer their landfills and we capture that natural gas, that can easily be put into, well, not easily, but it can be placed into compressed natural gas service as well. Those are green things. So comparing the technologies, some of it is a little bit about hype, but it really is the application that becomes important. So in the Trinidad and Tobago context, we have a grid that's going to charge electric vehicles. We have a grid that's going to assist in the compression of natural gas to put into your cars. So when you compare them, that is the analysis that you need to do to determine which is best.
Okay.
All right, from that point of view.
Yes. So we'd like to take a very short break once again. And when we come back, we will be comparing CNG on a worldwide scale. How does it rank? Is this the way to go when we compare it to first world countries? All right, so we take a very short break. Much more when we return. Good evening and welcome back, Trinidad and Tobago. Well, we continue our conversation here about NGC CNG, and we've been discussing some of the challenges being faced by the motoring public. And joining us on set, as we mentioned earlier, we have Mr. Curtis Mohammed, who is the president of NGC CNG. We have the sales and marketing manager, Ms. Goindoo, and we also have Mr. Roger Sant, who's the communications manager. So we've been chatting a little bit, and we mentioned during the break that we will be discussing the worldwide view of CNG. Mr. Sant, would you say that CNG is the way to go when we compare it to a worldwide scale?
Well, CNG is mature technology, both in Trinidad and Tobago and across the globe. And we continue to see adoption rates increasing for CNG. Quite recently, only in October of this past year, UPS announced that they were purchasing 6,000 natural gas powered trucks to do their logistics, to do their transportation across North America. And that's an investment of $450 million US. And they're going to start receiving those vehicles in 2020, running up to 2022. That's UPS, which is a worldwide and a household name across the globe. We have several transit authorities in North America, Los Angeles, as close as Miami-Dade County. They purchased over 200 CNG-powered vehicles a year ago, and they are on the streets of Miami transporting people. So we have transit authorities in North America, in Canada, that are purchasing CNG-powered buses. We also have in Europe, if people visit Europe, let's say Italy, for example, one of the most populous countries in terms of CNG vehicles, Germany, Spain, other parts of Europe, Middle East, the Far East, Central America, Argentina, for example, they are very much a CNG country in terms of vehicles, and in some of the same market segments as well, public transport especially, Colombia, Peru, Brazil. So Central South America, Europe, the Far East, the Middle East, they are all very much following CNG and using more and more CNG, and we see a lot of OEM or factory-made CNG vehicles in those parts of the world, especially in Europe. We don't have them in Trinidad and Tobago just yet, but they are very much available and in use in those parts of the world.
So you spoke about the factory-made CNG vehicles. Why aren't there more factory-made CNG vehicles?
So I'll take that one. In Trinidad, the sedan that we're familiar with would be the Honda City. That company decided very early on, we're going to pursue this very aggressively with Honda. And that's exactly what it did. It didn't happen overnight. It took the better part of a year, maybe a little more than a year, just to convince them to bring that to Trinidad and Tobago. And we would have done for them as we've done for other companies when they request of us, can you assist us in this argument for bringing vehicles to Trinidad and Tobago? So the Honda came in like that. Southern Sails also did the same thing with the Isuzu truck. There's a 7.5-ton truck, 100% CNG, very excellent performer on the road. Isuzu from Japan would have come down, and we had to work together with the actual branded owners to make the argument for that here. We are not seeing as much of these vehicles. We have, they have Volvos, they have Volkswagen, they have Audis that come with CNG in Europe. but they're not here. It takes a fair amount of effort.
Yes.
All right? Massey was successful, as a matter of fact, with their Hyundai brand of the 3-ton and 5-ton trucks. They call it the Mighty CNG. Right? So those are 100%. So what it boils down to is how much effort it boils down to the inclination of the brand owners to bring the vehicles down here. And of course, I think it also depends on what the public does in Trinidad and Tobago. I want one. Do I want a CNG vehicle? Sure. Let's pursue it. So if they don't, they need to connect with that market. We do our lobbying as well. But the market is seated in some respects. As it's getting more and more vehicles on the road, and you can see it now with that little blue sticker, the CNG sticker on vehicles, you see it a lot more regularly. The market is, the tide is moving, it's turning, it's going in the right direction, yes.
Sure.
And if I can add,
Sure.
back in 2014 when NGC CNG was operationalized, we had 0 OEM or factory-made CNG vehicles in the country. Now we're up to 15. So we have 15 different brands of CNG OEM vehicles in this country, from the passenger vehicle, the sedan, to the omnibuses, the trucks, and even PTSC has CNG-powered buses. So it is a process, it takes time, and we have seen that growth in 4 years from 0 to 15, and we fully expect to have more factory-made CNG vehicles coming on soon.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Mohammed, you spoke earlier a little bit about the comparison with CNG and other options. But if we are looking at the hybrid and electric vehicles, how do these vehicles compare, even from a worldwide perspective, in terms of going CNG?
Our view is that there's space for everyone in this market in Trinidad and Tobago. Some may not agree, but we certainly agree that there's space for all the different options. Now, in Trinidad, all vehicles, alternative energy vehicles, are incentivized in some form or fashion. Now, incentives could be done differently. It could be done where you lower the import reality for these vehicles and make it affordable while you transition. So Trinidad and Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago needs electric, it needs hybrid, it also needs CNG as options. Let the consumer choose. Now, that's one way of getting vehicles in. The other way is you have to change the vehicles. Can you change? All right, so we have 1 million vehicles in Trinidad and Tobago. The only realistic option now, achievable option, is the compressed natural gas option for them. You can't hybridize those existing vehicles. You can't electrify them, right? And replacement is one way of doing it. So 25,000 vehicles a year on average will come into Trinidad and Tobago. That will be the branded market. That will be the foreign use market. We have 1 million vehicles right now. Just replacing them, if tomorrow every vehicle came in, completely electric or hybrid, or even CNG, it'll take 40 years, to completely change the inventory of vehicles. So those vehicles are coming to Trinidad and Tobago, but the majority of vehicles being sold in Trinidad and Tobago are still not hybrid and electric. They're still normal vehicles that people always buy. Now, if I buy a vehicle today, and it's an internal combustion engine, it's going to be in Trinidad for about at least 15 years. So the option to make it clean remains to be CNG. The option to give you a lower price remains CNG. Right? So I don't know if that answers your question to some extent.
Definitely. I want to talk a little bit about the safety of CNG. For those viewers who are wondering about the safety, what does CNG have to offer in terms of the safety benefits?
Well, in Trinidad and Tobago, the regulations are you must have your conversion done by a licensed converter. So these are licensed by the Ministry of Energy. We have 3 licensed converters now in Trinidad and Tobago. Quite recently, the Vehicle Maintenance Company got their license, and they're going to start doing CNG conversions pretty soon. The kit, the conversion kit that is put into a vehicle is also sanctioned by the Ministry of Energy. So it's not a matter of someone going on Amazon or Alibaba and buying a kit and bringing it in and asking someone to put it in for them. So there are strict regulations with respect to that. The Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standards, a couple of years ago, with the assistance of NGC CNG, revised the national standard for CNG in this country. So we are working right now with revised and up-to-date standards that takes some of the best practices from the US and FBA 52 and Europe and incorporates them into the Trinidad and Tobago context. We also have trained technicians. So another part of what NGC CNG did in the last couple of years was to start a technicians training course with the National Energy Skills Center. So the people who are doing conversions at the licensed converters are all trained. And we take safety as a big priority in the NGC group of companies. It's not just a matter of CNG. We odorized the gas a couple of years ago, so natural gas by its nature is odorless. However, an odor is put into the gas so that if there's any type of leak in your CNG vehicle, you can't pick up that odor, and you can take your vehicle to the converter or to your OEM supplier and have that vehicle checked out. So a lot is happening with respect to safety. CNG is not is not unsafe compared to liquid fuels. It is as safe as a liquid fuel vehicle.
Okay. Now, if we were to go into talk a little bit about the future of CNG in Trinidad and Tobago, I saw one of the comments in our Facebook page under the story where we spoke about the CNG woes of some of the motorists in South Trinidad. Someone wrote, they don't think that Trinidad and Tobago is ready for CNG. How would you respond to something like that, Mr. Mohammed?
I would say we need to be careful about getting caught up in the emotion of the moment. I would counter by saying there are a lot of other people who completely disagree with that statement, not just us. And we've seen that as well on the Facebook pages. So this has got to be crazy. CNG is an option for very many people. There are considerable amount of there's a considerable amount of time before Trinidad will changes completely the alternate fuel space that we have, right? Where can I go? All right, we have stations that are operating at about 130 capacity, half the capacity that they could supply. There was some unfortunate sensationalism with respect to what would have happened recently. But by far and large, every single person that we know that would have been converted, right, would always say, well, this is what we want. We can't go back. Now, when you talk to the CNG user, and when the taxi drivers are telling you, and this is not one of them will tell you this, for example, or any long distance, but taxi drivers particularly, I'm not going to work today if I don't get CNG. Now, how does a statement like CNG wouldn't last when you have that is the general rhetoric of most of the people? Now, remember too, in Trinidad and Tobago, we have two different groups of people. We have people who will buy new vehicles, and we have people who continue to own vehicles and keep trading vehicles. The people who buy new vehicles are about 2.5% of the population every year. Yes?
Yes.
The other 97.5% of the people have their existing vehicle to contend with. And as soon as they have gotten comfortable with the prospect, they continue to convert. I mean, part of one of the problems we had is that we had encouraged so much demand for conversions that even some of the persons who needed to convert, they say, well, I have to join a queue. I have to join a queue to actually convert. And then we would tell the converters, make sure those people go to the top of the queue because they are self-motivated. So we don't agree with the statement because that's different from the feedback that we are getting from other members of the public. And we poll them. The easiest poll to do is just go to the CNG line in your neighborhood gas station and ask the people what do they think about it.
Yes.
Don't ask us, ask them, right? And that should tell you something.
Yes. And Ms. Goindoo, if we're talking a little bit about the future of CNG in Trinidad and Tobago from a marketing and sales perspective, what sort of strategies and policies we can look forward to in the future?
Well, we currently, offer our sponsored conversions to the targeted segment. And what we would do is seed the market for those same self-motivated users. Because what you find is once you have that input of brand ambassadors, we call them, their word of mouth, their marketing is what carries them across to encouraging others to continue. So we do expect that, the uptake of CNG continues at even higher rates because, we're looking at fuel now, but you're talking to future. So, if you end up in a fully unsubsidized environment, then what is the cost to a consumer? What is the cost to fleet owners? Commercial and the public transportation. So we do expect the continued increase and uptake on it.
Yes. And Mr. Sant, in terms of seminars and educating the public on becoming more environmentally friendly, even though we know that's not really the first focus, the main focus is your pocket change. What sort of plans or initiatives you have in place to help to educate persons about this?
Well, as the company continues to grow, in May this year, we held a symposium on CNG over 2 days. So day one, we brought together several key stakeholders to discuss CNG, to talk about CNG, to talk about some of the benefits of CNG and some of the drawbacks as well. We had, for example, members of the PDA there, and they asked several pertinent questions about CNG and about fuel in Trinidad and Tobago. We had the marketers, we had PTSC, we had an international expert from one of the equipment suppliers, Landy Renzo, and he came and he gave us that global perspective. So we were able to chat with the key stakeholders in Trinidad and Tobago and speak a common language and provide information that many of them did not have. And then on day two, we had an open house show where all the CNG OEM vehicles and some of the converted vehicles were on display. Members of the public had an opportunity to come in and chat with the OEM suppliers, the converters, some of the finance houses who provide financing for the purchase of CNG vehicles. So we did that this year. It was very successful, and we fully intend to do it again on a bigger scale next year, right around April, May, somewhere in there, and we will be publicizing that so that members of the public can come and find out more about CNG and possibly also alternative fuel vehicles in Trinidad and Tobago. Because as Mr. Mohammed said, we believe there's space for alternative fuel vehicles in Trinidad and Tobago.
Wonderful. In your closing comments, Mr. Mohammed, I'd also like you to touch a little bit. I know you mentioned in previous interviews that your team would have made certain suggestions towards solving that impasse that exists between the Dealers Association and the government. How confident are you that these matters will be resolved and the future of CNG in Trinidad and Tobago? What are your sentiments?
We are very confident about it. When we did this industry, we looked at all the stakeholders that we had control over to assist the market. The reality is that with the petroleum dealers, we are constrained by what the rules and regulation would have been on margins, for example. So in our network, which would be the consumer has a cleaner fuel and they save a lot of money. The supplier of vehicles, we spent $160 million for our program, and well in excess of $400 million in vehicles have been sold in Trinidad and Tobago. The converters have done more than $50 million in conversion, right? The Forex, because we are displacing some of the liquid fuel, is a little over $80 million would have been saved in Forex equivalent. So the market is doing well and the stakeholders are doing well. The last issue that we have here, which is now before the ministry, and the ministry, based on our discussions, we know that those discussions will go well. We are confident that they will come up with a solution. They're the last one in the puzzle, all right, unfortunately. But they are one of them that we're pretty sure that it will be addressed. We are confident about that. Right?
Okay. All right. Well, any closing comments, Ms. Goindoo? What would you like to say to those looking on, wondering perhaps if CNG is the way to go?
I would say yes, it definitely is. If you're looking at an option for your existing vehicle to save some disposable income, to do something extra, just, you know, for your future, even for now, definitely consider it. It is a safe fuel. It is a clean fuel. It is, you know, our future as we know it.
And Mr. Sant, your closing comments.
Yes, well, we know one of the stickling points with persons will be supply, and we are working on improving supply across Trinidad and Tobago. We have a flagship station that is being built in Presal, right on the highway as you exit towards Rivulet Road, and we expect that to be operational in 2020, and that is going to be a very huge station in terms of 10 CNG filling points as well as liquid filling points, and that is going to help to revolutionize CNG in Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight as we discussed some of the recent developments and future plans for CNG in Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, thank you to our guests, Mr. Curtis Mohammed, President of NGC CNG, Mr. Roger Sant, Communications Manager, NGC CNG, and we also had Ms. Alisa Goindoo, Sales and Marketing Manager, NGC CNG, for being with us. And to you, our viewers looking on, have a good night.
This is TTT. Live for local.